out of the labor force. We have 50 million people in poverty. We have 43 million, and now it's actually going to be probably closer to 50 million people on food stamps. And I'll tell you what, if we had a real, hello,
Sanders, I'm a United States Senator from the state of Vermont. I want to welcome everybody to the state of Vermont, but when you come up in the wintertime, make sure you bring some warm clothes. It's a little bit colder than here in South Carolina. I have 4 kids. I have 7 beautiful grandchildren. My wife Jane and I have been married for 27 years. I am running for President of the United States because I believe that in our great country we can do a lot better for working people and for poor people than we are currently doing. I think, as many of you know, we are economically a lot better off today under President Obama than we were 7 years ago. 7 years ago, we were losing about 800,000 jobs a month. 7 years ago, the world's financial system was on the verge of collapse. So we have made some good progress, and we should be proud of that. But what we should also remember, that we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But most people don't know that, because a lot of that wealth rests in the hands of a few. Many people have very little. In America today, we should not have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. In America today, we should not have 29 million people without any health insurance, and many more with large deductibles and co-payments. In America today, we should not have a situation where 51% of African American high school graduates between 17 and 20 are unemployed or underemployed. And in America today, we should not have more people in jail than any other country on earth. I think it makes a lot more sense for us to be investing in education and jobs rather than jails and incarceration. And in America, we should not be seeing what we see on our television sets in terms of what some police officers have done to unarmed people. That we should not be seeing. We need major criminal justice reform in this country. All Americans should know when they walk down the street, they're not going to be harassed by police departments. They're not going to be unfairly arrested. So I want to see us as a nation which does not have more people in jail than any other country, but has the best educated population on earth. And that is why I believe that in the year 2015, 2016, we should make public colleges and universities tuition free. I want to see every child in South Carolina his or her family know that if they study hard in school, they pay attention, they will be able to make it to college, regardless of the income of their family. There are some people out there, I'm not going to be political, talk about cutting Social Security or cutting Medicare. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me when people are trying to get by on $11,000, $12,000, $13,000 a year. We've got to expand Social Security, not cut it. So I just want to thank all of you for allowing me to say a few words, and I look forward to working with all of you to make sure that our great country fulfills its promise for all of our people and creates the kind of nation that you and I know we can become. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
You know, it's amazing. I mentioned food stamps, and that guy who's seriously overweight went crazy. He went crazy. Amazing. Amazing. That's an amazing sight.
Let's bring in Mr. Trump right now. He joins us on the phone. You just heard those poll results, Donald Trump. Also, a new poll out in New Hampshire showing you holding the lead. Is the nomination now yours to lose?
I don't know. I don't think about it. I think about the date. All of a sudden, February 1st comes. That's Iowa, and then we have New Hampshire. We're doing great in both those places. We're doing great all over the country. I think I'm leading every state, but we're doing really well. I was happy to hear your numbers, but I'm not that surprised. And we'll see what happens. I mean, people are tired. They're sick and tired of incompetence. They're sick and tired of stupid people leading them. The deals they make, whether it's trade or whether it's dealing with ISIS, everything is wrong. They don't know what they're doing. I was after the oil. I said, attack the oil. I've been telling you that, George, for 2 years. Yeah. Attack the oil. They didn't do it. ISIS became wealthy with the oil. Now they're starting to attack the oil. Nobody mentions it was me.
You did stir up a controversy with those comments over the database. Let's try to clear that up. Are you unequivocally now ruling out a database on all Muslims?
No, not at all. I want a database for the refugees that if they come into the country. We have no idea who these people are. When the Syrian refugees are going to start pouring into this country, we don't know if they're ISIS. We don't know if it's a Trojan horse. And I definitely want a database and other checks and balances. We want to go with watch lists. We want to go with databases. And we have no choice. We have no idea who's being sent in here. This could be the great Trojan. It's probably not, but it could be the great Trojan horse of all time. Where they come in. When I look at those migration, when I look at the migration and the lines, and I see all strong, very powerful-looking men. They're men. And I see very few women. I see very few children. There's something strange going on. And if you look at what's happening in Europe, a lot of bad things are happening in Europe. Just ask the folks that live in Germany, George. A lot of bad things are happening. So
the statistics
we want to be smart. We want to, hey, George, we want to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant. And we have to call is radical. You know, we have to just say it's radical Islamic terrorism. And that's what it is. And we have a president that won't even issue the term. But when these Syrians come in, or wherever they are, because we're not even sure that they're coming in from Syria, if they're going to come in, we have to be very, very vigilant. And database would be fine for them, and watch list is fine. We have to watch and see what we're doing. They should not come in, by the way. They should not be allowed in.
Just for the record, though, the statistics do show the majority of the refugees coming in are women and children. You've also told Yahoo News that we have to be doing things that were unthinkable a year ago. I want to get into what you had in mind. For example, do you think we should bring back enhanced interrogation like waterboarding?
Well, we have to be strong. You know, they don't use waterboarding over there. They use chopping off people's heads. They use drowning people. I don't know if you've seen with the cages where they put people in cages and they drown them in the ocean and then they lift out the cage. And we're talking about waterboarding.
So you'd bring back waterboarding?
We have to. I would bring it back. Yes, I would bring it back. I think waterboarding is peanuts compared to what they do to us. What they're doing to us, what they did to James Foley when they chopped off his head, that's a whole different level. And I would absolutely bring back interrogation and strong interrogation.
You've also said we have to consider closing mosques. Jeb Bush called that a sign of weakness.
Well, Jeb Bush is a weak person, and that's been defined very strongly. I mean, Jeb is a weak person who is a, you know, I call him a low-energy person. That's what he is. I mean, you call him anything you want. But Jeb is a person that will not solve a problem like this. You have very, very tough people that you're dealing with. They only understand strength. They don't understand weakness. Somebody like Jeb and others that are running against me. And by the way, Hillary is another one. I mean, Hillary is a person who doesn't have the strength or the stamina, in my opinion, to be president. She doesn't have strength or stamina. She's not a strong enough person to be president.
But what would be your criteria for closing a mosque?
We're dealing with George, we're dealing with very, very strong people, and you need strength and you need stamina.
I get that, but I want to get the details, though. What would be your criteria for closing a mosque, and how does that square with the First Amendment? You said your top priority would be to preserve and protect our religious liberty. Is that only for Christians? What are your criteria for closing a mosque?
Well, I don't want to close mosques. I want to surveil mosques. I want mosques surveilled. We were doing it in New York City for a while until the worst mayor that New York City has ever had got elected, de Blasio, which was a fluke. And, well, I would do, certainly there are certain hot spots, and everybody knows they're hot spots. And let me tell you, the people that aren't involved in those mosques, they know who the bad ones are, and they know who the good ones are, but they don't talk. And we have to surveil the mosques. And we were doing it. We were doing it recently until de Blasio closed them up in New York City. We were doing it recently. We have to surveil the mosques. And big material and good material, from what I understood from a very good source, was coming out of those mosques. We were learning a lot, and they were stopping problems and potential problems by learning what was happening. Hey, look, I don't want to close up mosques, but things have to happen where you have got to use strong measures, or you're going to see buildings coming down all over New York City and elsewhere.
You've also talked about you want to keep the terror watch list, but under current law, individuals on the terror watch list and the no-fly list have been allowed to buy guns and explosives. Are you okay with that?
We have to have a watch list, and if that watch list has somebody that's, we have the laws right now. We have the laws already on the books as far as Second Amendment and guns. And as you know, I'm a really big proponent of the Second Amendment. I'll give you an example. If in Paris, some of those people, if some of those people had guns, you wouldn't have had the horror show that you had.
But why should someone on the watch list be able to have a gun?
No, if people are on a watch list or people are sick, this is already covered in the legislation that we already have, George. It's already fully covered.
No, but under current law, people on the watch list are allowed to buy guns.
Listen, George, if we have an enemy of state, I don't want to give him anything. I want to have him in jail. That's what I want. I want to have him in jail. But if those people in Paris had guns in that room, it would have been a shootout, and very few people would have been hurt by comparison to the number that were hurt.
But yes or no?
I'll tell you who would have been hurt. The bad guys would have, because they were the only ones that had the guns.
Mr. Trump, yes or no, should someone on the terror watch list be allowed to buy a gun?
If somebody is on a watch list and an enemy of state, and we know it's an enemy of state, I would keep them away, absolutely.
You know, you raised some eyebrows yesterday with comments you made at your latest rally. I want to show them relating to 9/11.
Hey, I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down. And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down. Thousands of people were cheering.
You know, the police say that didn't happen, and all those rumors have been on the internet for some time. So did you misspeak yesterday?
It did happen. I saw it. It was on television.
You saw that with your own eyes?
George, it did happen. There were people that were cheering in the other side of New Jersey, where you have large Arab populations. They were cheering as the World Trade Center came down. I know it might be not politically correct for you to talk about it, but there were people cheering as that building came down, as those buildings came down. And that tells you something. It was well covered at the time, George. Now, I know they don't like to talk about it, but it was well covered at the time. There were people over in New Jersey that were watching it, a heavy Arab population, that were cheering as the buildings came down. Not good.
As I said, the police have said it didn't happen. What I want to move on right now, a chorus of rivals have pounced on your database comments, and a super PAC supporting John Kasich launched this ad against you.
On-the-job training for president does not work. Benghazi, beheadings, Paris. Our lives depend on a commander-in-chief with experience who understands the world.
Clear implication is that you don't. What's your response to that ad?
John Kasich is going nowhere. He was at the head of Lehman. He was one of the top people at Lehman when Lehman Brothers almost took down the world. He's going nowhere. Let him do his ads. Anybody that does an ad against me, it'll be hit by 10 times, and that's the story. And, you know, people would like to do. Look, they want to do it because I'm leading. I mean, you just came out with a poll that says I'm leading, but everyone else is coming out with polls saying I'm leading because people are sick and tired of stupid and incompetent people leading our nation. We have incompetent people. When President Obama stands up and says ISIS is contained, and then a few hours later you have one of the most horrible attacks where hundreds of people are killed, and you have 300 people laying in the hospital, many of them dying, they'll be added to the list of the people killed. And we have no idea. And then he wants to take in people that have no documentation, no paperwork, no anything. From Syria on the migration, people are going to come pouring in, and the number he wants is much higher than 10,000. I've heard it's 200,000. That's the real number he wants. I've even heard 250,000 people. We have a president that doesn't know what he's doing. We have a president, George, who is totally incompetent.
That number is all refugees, not from Syria. But finally, you know, that super PAC is not alone. Front page story in the Wall Street Journal yesterday talks about GOP operatives planning to launch a guerrilla campaign against Trump. They're saying the Republican establishment is increasingly alarmed by your enduring strength, and that they're going to have the first attempt to unite donors from rival camps into a single anti-Trump force. If that begins to happen, are you going to reconsider an independent run if they come after you to try to take you out?
Well, we'll see what happens. It'll be very interesting, but I'm leading every poll by a lot. It's not even a little bit anymore. It's a lot, and I resonate with the people. I had 10,000 people yesterday. Every place I go, if I have crowds smaller than 10,000, it's like a small crowd for me. Nobody else can get 200. I mean, Jeb Bush and these guys, Kasich goes out, he speaks. If he gets 20 people in a room, it's a lot of people. Nobody else gets anybody. I get crowds, and you know it, you cover it. I get crowds of 6,000, 10,000, 20,000. I had a 35,000 crowd.
But you're open to an independent run?
Well, I'm going to have to see what happens. I will see what happens. I have to be treated fairly. You know, when I did this, I said, I have to be treated fairly. If I'm treated fairly, I'm fine. All I want to do is a level playing field. And I think people are surprised that, you know, they're politicians and they've been doing this stuff all their lives. I haven't. I've been a job producer. I've done great, you know, things. I've done fabulous developments all over the world, and I've made a lot of money, and that's the kind of thinking we need in office. That's the kind of thinking we need in Washington, and that's why people are resonating with me. And, you know, they know there's a great level of competence. We have a great level of incompetence right now in Washington, and frankly, we have a lot of incompetent politicians running for office, and they can't understand, you know, how come an outsider can be doing so well within the party. I used to be, George, the fair-haired boy. You know, when I was a contributor, I know more about contributions than anybody. I contributed at the top of the line. But now all of a sudden, I'm somebody that's a little bit, you know, they're a little bit, I guess they can't understand what's happening. But what's happening is very simple. People want competence now. They're tired of incompetent people. It's as simple as that.
Mr. Trump, thanks for your time this morning.